Hello and welcome back to the Puncher's Chance podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking Terence Crawford, Israel Madrimov. We're going to be talking the Barnsley show that we went up to last weekend. We're also going to be talking about some controversy in the Olympic boxing, talking about a certain promoter that has been saying some interesting things on YouTube. And other than that, we'll be obviously, as always, previewing and predicting next weekend's fights, which this weekend is Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Sahil Bohachuk. So before we jump into all of that, obviously the big main event over in LA, controversial decision for some people. Let us know down below who you thought won, Terence Crawford or Ismail Radjarov. Which one do you think had the decision? And I'll jump straight over to you, Ben. What did you make of the fight? Which one did you think had the decision in that one?
Yeah, I think even a slaughter might have a bit of a split opinion on who won the fight, but from what I've watched through the whole fight, I thought it wasn't exactly fireworks. I think that was the issue. It can make it a bit difficult to score sometimes when it's like the rounds are so close and there's probably one or two punches either way that can decide it. But I think in the end I scored a 116, 112 to Crawford. So I had the same as I think one or two of the judges. But I suppose we could see either way. People will make the argument for Madrimov winning, but I just didn't think he'd done enough, and I thought Crawford was just clever with his shot selection and picking the right times to do the counter shots. But yeah, I had him winning by I think it was it 4 or 5 rounds in the end.
What we need to remember as well about Madrimov, though, this was only his 12th professional fight. I know you could talk about his amateur career, incredible amateur career, but he was coming up against a pound-for-pound king in Terence Crawford, moving up again in weight, and there was a lot of questions about the size and all, but when they weighed in, I don't know about you boys, but they both looked exactly the same size. Obviously, Terence Crawford put on the weight, but there was no difference, was it? Obviously, then fight night, maybe the rehydration was different, but yeah, for me, I don't know if you boys would agree with this, but going into round 10, I did have it 5-5, and that's where I think Crawford did take the fight from Madrimov and potentially took it because he has the more experience of going those rounds. But for me, it was a great fight. I mean, I'm not being funny, the crowd was booing through a bit of it, which I didn't understand. It was a proper chess match, really, and that's sometimes the best fights you watch are when fighters aren't willing to take risk and all. I don't even think Terence Crawford changed stance at all in that fight, just to show respect of how tricky Israel Madrimov was, But for me, it was a good fight. I thought Terence Crawford, I did say Madrimov might have won, but then I watched it a second time around and I was thinking, well, these 2 rounds that I potentially gave to Madrimov, you can make an argument that Crawford did the more work, the more damaging work. But yeah, listen, it was a great fight. And for me, Madrimov from this fight, like we say a lot with fighters who lose, they can come again. This isn't over for him. It's 12th professional fight. He can come back. I wouldn't mind seeing the rematch now. Take out of shape. We're going to talk about it in a minute about Canelo Alvarez. That's not going to happen now. So potentially a rematch. I wouldn't be against seeing Crawford Madrimov too. But yeah, overall, it was a great event over in LA, wasn't it? From Wednesday with the fight night to, the press conference at the Chinese Theatre to obviously then the fight night. It was brilliant, and if that's what we're expecting for the Wembley edition in London, I'm going to be a happy boy. Fair play.
Yeah, I think for me, Israel Madrimov, Terence Crawford was possibly the highest level boxing fight I've seen in a very, very long time. It was so technical, it was so difficult, so back and forth. And that's, therefore I can understand why the audience were disappointed and there was some booing from inside the stadium. But I just think it's unreasonable. It was such a good fight to watch. And maybe I had the benefit of watching it back afterwards, and so I was kind of looking at it and trying to pick apart who won. So I was in that sort of analytical mind. But I just really enjoyed it as a matchup, and like you say, Harry, I think I'd happily see that again. I think I had it 116, 113. So I had Crawford up by just 1 point because I gave him a draw round on round number 3. But other than that, I think all three of us had it relatively similar going into those final 2, and like you say, Crawford just edged it out when he had to, and he's just so good, isn't he? He's just so good. It was a difficult fight, and Madrimov made it as hard as he could for him and kept Crawford guessing for as long as he could. But those guys, the greats, they make it work, they make it happen, and that's what he did. He made it work. He found a way through Madrimov and ways to score points here and there. I also think what was really great about it is there was next to no holding in that fight. It was pretty much always a fight. There was no holding. There was no clinching. They were always sort of trying to throw some punches, even if it was sort of cat and mouse with that lead hand. I really, really enjoyed it. And I thought it was a good way to top off what was otherwise a really exciting card. I mean, I don't know about you boys. There was some brilliant, brilliant fights on there. I know you'll probably want to talk about Jose Valenzuela, Ben, but sorry, Harry, because that was the prediction that you got right. So I'll let you move on to that one.
Well, I'm not being funny. When I woke up on Sunday morning, I looked at my phone and I saw the result and I was shocked. That was just a sort of prediction that you make where you're just trying to be a bit different. And yeah, I just thought Venezuela's reach was too much for Isaac Cruz, and he absolutely schooled him. And I want to say as well, one of the judges had Isaac Cruz winning, which, I mean, what fight was he watching? I thought he clearly won the fight, and yeah, what an upset, and it's great because I think there was a story that his parents brought him over from Mexico at 3 years old, to America from Mexico, sorry, at 3 years old, to change their lives, and then he dedicated that fight, that win, to his parents for all that they've done for him, and it's a brilliant story, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer bloke if that's the the main story. But yeah, listen, the fight was good. Venezuela, you talk about the refereeing on this card. I thought the refereeing was quite good all night long. One thing I learned as well, I don't know if you boys saw, but in the Steve Nelson fight on the kickoff, they used an instant replay sort of thing that I've never seen before in boxing. But yeah, going back to Venezuela, that jab was very good. He kept them at range, and yeah, happy days. I won the predictions as well, and I didn't win the predictions by a small margin, did I? I absolutely battered you both. So it's about time as well. Normally I've given you boys 20 weeks of winning. I need to start winning again, and hopefully I can start getting my record back up and running.
Yeah, I was really gutted with Isaac Cruz. I obviously had him winning in my predictions. I like the sort of fighter that he is, a very front foot fighter, very aggressive, similar to sort of Nick Ball over here. Like, I like that type of fighter. I like watching that type of fighter. But as you said, I think it was just the height advantage, size difference made the difference in the fight. It was just very good shot selection that won him the rounds. It was a split decision in the end, so I think most people were expecting the result to be unanimous. I was after watching it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Valenzuela goes next now in terms of who his next opponent could be. Obviously, he's gained the world title now, so he'll have a target on his back. But yeah, one I was potentially looking at was Dalton Smith, if we were going to throw a British name in the mix. Obviously, a European champion and someone that will be looking for his shot at a world title level. I know he's got a fight coming up soon, but if he can get through that, then I think a sort of test against someone who's recently won a world title would be a good chance for him to mix it at that level and try and nick a world title himself.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, first of all, I mean, yeah, Dalton Smith would be a brilliant fight against Valenzuela. But also, Valenzuela was so impressive in that fight. We so often talk about that kind of boxer versus puncher where someone's got that one shot knockout and someone else is a better boxer, and you watch it and 4 or 5 rounds in, you start to think, oh, well, actually, is this guy going to be able to beat him? And eventually they get knocked out and you go, oh, of course, that's what was always going to happen. And Pitbull Cruz asked the absolute most of Valenzuela. He really tested him. He really made him be at his absolute best for full 12 rounds. But he just was. He was able to get out the way of 90% of those shots and establish his jab and just work through. And there was that very low shot from Cruz in the 9th, which obviously helped, I think, gave him a bit of time to recover. I thought it was quite funny, the ref saying, oh, you've got a box on, just get on with it. And I think, well, put a box on yourself and let him punch you in the bollocks and see what you have to say about it. I thought that was a bit harsh from him, but it was just Valenzuela had so much success with that that left uppercut out of the southpaw stance, and Pitbull Cruz didn't really have an answer to that one, and it made a brilliant fight. And I'm a bit of a fan of Valenzuela now. I doubted him going into it, but after that performance, if we can see him put those kind of performances up against difficult and quality fighters, time after time, then I'm looking forward to it and looking forward to the career he's got. And then just the other fights in this card, you've got obviously Andy Ruiz, Jarrell Miller. It was an interesting fight, ended in a draw. Maybe Ruiz can count himself lucky for that one. Harry's, why are you shaking your head, bud? What's your thoughts on that?
Listen, they're both finished now. Can we move on? I think that's all. I think when we came into this fight, we always said that Jarrell Miller should be nowhere near a boxing ring and all that, blah blah blah. But all fight week, he's actually, I started to like him a bit more, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but yeah, he got robbed, didn't he? Let's be honest, he got robbed. The drug cheat got robbed, and yeah, I think for me, Andy Ruiz, I think he's finished now, and the fight I want to see now, we're going to talk about it, Jared Anderson, Big Baby Miller, the Big Baby battle head to head is a hell of a fight there, because Jarrell Miller, he showed that if he actually took boxing seriously, did a proper camp, he can actually do something. And yeah, I was shocked watching it, and yeah, listen, Jarrell Miller could move on to better things, but for me, I think Andy Ruiz now should just stop it, because when he made that absolute upset over in New York in MSG, when he broke a lot of our hearts when he beat Anthony Joshua, to then in the rematch put on nearly a stone, it just showed really, all right, you've made a lot of money, you can't argue. I hope he's kept a lot of that money that he's earned from those fights. But you're like, really? Did you really have to? You didn't take it seriously. If you took it a little bit more seriously, you might have, got a win. But no, listen, I think for me, Andy Ruiz, there's no way he gets back to a world title fight. You can't draw with Jarrell Miller and then claim that you're going to be up there with AJ, Fury, Usyk in the next 12 months. There's no way. Just call it a day. And that hand injury as well that he had in the 5th round wasn't good. For me, it was a terrible fight. I didn't enjoy watching it at all. It was the sort of fight, again, like we all did, was watch it on replay, watch it back, and you're thinking, oh, come on, where's that fast forward button where we can put it on 30 speed or something just to get through it? But yeah, for me, Andy Ruiz is done. There's no fights out there now for me that interest me in seeing him fight again.
I think it's a fight that you see the rematch in, though. Obviously, with it being a majority draw, I think there's going to be a want to settle it between them two, and the money will be there for the both of them, so they'd both be willing to take it. But I think the two of them are probably could be seen as sort of stepping stone fighters now for someone to make a name for themselves by getting a win over them. Someone that we looked at last week in Moses Atoma, someone who's dominating in his performances at heavyweight. And I've seen Andy Clark talk about it. He's someone that him and his team probably could be looking at, like Andy Ruiz or Jarrell Miller, and thinking if we can go and make a statement against someone like that, that'll push us again towards the world title picture. So I don't think it's the end for either of them. I agree with you. I think Jarrell Miller should have won. I think I had him winning by 2 or 3 rounds in the end, because it come again to, like we said last week, it was how much Andy Ruiz wants it and how much he's prepared for it, or whether it's just a payday for him. And I think you could see throughout the fight there's just the fitness levels that made the difference in the end, I thought. And it's just a lack of preparation on his part, I think, and the not willing to get himself in the ring and often enough. Obviously only fighting, was it twice or 3 times in 4 years, is never going to be good enough, and especially not a heavyweight when you've got so many competitive fights and tough fighters coming up against you.
The only thing that I've got with Andy Ruiz is money. He's not going to get those big money fights, and that's what he wants now. That's what he's going to cash out on. And you look at, like you said, I love that Moses Atoma fight. I think that's a brilliant fight, but you remember Andy Ruiz for that massive upset, and now we've got an Andy Ruiz where we're not really interested in. And he could become the next. I'm not saying that he will, but he could become the next like Marius Vac, where you just put him up against them just to say if you can get through him, you're definitely up into the top 10 in the world. I don't think Andy Ruiz is that sort of fighter. So yeah, just call it a day. Just call it a day. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't quite dislike it as much as you did. I think, to be honest, as a fight, I don't think it is all that different to the Joyce Chisora fight that we obviously saw in the O2. And neither fighter had the tank, and neither fighter had the skill, and it just kind of seemed like a bit of a battle and a bit of a war. But and that's not always the worst thing in the world. But a heavyweight clash that I think was stupendously better, so much better than me and you, Harry, watched just as we got back from Barnsley, or just we got back from the show, was that Jared Anderson Bakole fight. I mean, Bakole just sort of channeled his inner George Foreman and just square as you like, just wandered around that ring after Jared Anderson, who looked sharp, looked snappy, looked like he could maybe cause Bakole some problems. But then the power is just phenomenal, like scary, scary power to knock him out and knock him down with just one shot, basically every time. It was brilliant to watch, and you guys all said, and I predicted Anderson to get the win because I just didn't think they would make that mistake. I assumed they had seen something from Jared Anderson to say why they were making that fight, but really what's happened now is Bakole's put himself back in contention for one of those guys around the top of the heavyweight division. And I think the only fight for me is that Zhile Zhang fight. I think we've watched Zhile Zhang lose to a number of the top guys now in and around that division. Obviously, Joseph Parker, and I think Bakole, I think he probably would be able to put Zhile Zhang out of there. But either way, you'd be getting a phenomenal knockout from either one of them if that fight was to happen. What do you think, Ben? Your promoter, Ben. You have I made a good shout there, or are you saying no, that's crap? Don't bother.
No, to be fair, I don't think anyone would want to turn down watching Bakole and Zhang, because them two, it definitely wouldn't go the distance. I think that's pretty certain. But we were talking about it last week, and I think a lot of people in boxing were saying that like the fight they put together, Anderson and Bakole, like everyone was just looking at it thinking, why are you taking such a big risk against someone that is very dangerous? And like Bakole's only been beaten once by Michael Hunter, and even that was it 5-6 years ago. Since then, he's like come on leaps and bounds and is a much better fighter, in much better shape. And you hear about him all the time, like always sparring with the top heavyweights, and the best heavyweights always get him involved in sparring because they know how dangerous he can be and his skill set he has. Uh, in terms of Jared Anderson, it was just the matter again of like with Andy Ruiz of how much he wanted it, and I think it showed in that fight that when it got tough and he had to try and dig in, it's just not something he wanted to do, and I'm not sure whether it will be something he'll want to do going forward and where we'll see him go from there. It is, I think it's a make or break moment in his career in terms of whether he bounces back from it, like we've seen with heavyweights in the past where they've taken a big defeat. But if, especially in heavyweight boxing, if your mind isn't in it, the big hitters in the division are going to take you out if you're not prepared.
Martin Bakole is this heavyweight where you look at him and you think, yeah, I could stand my chance. You look at the names. Jared Anderson, I said at the start of the fight, I said Jared Anderson is very confident this week. But as I said, Martin Bakole is the sort of heavyweight where you don't want to fight him. No one wants to fight Martin Bakole. And when this fight was made, like you just said, Ben, you're thinking to yourself, why have they done that? You know why they've done it. It's his biggest payday of his life. He's young, he's 24, he can come again. But how much is that defeat going to hurt him? I remember Daniel Dubois against Joe Joyce. When that happened, everyone said, Dubois finished this and that. He's the IBF world champion now, so he could come back. But it was a heavy loss, and we could have something on the hands of a Joe Joyce situation where, Martin Bakole's just taken everything out of him, taking the hunger out of him, taking the punch resistance out of him. And yeah, for me, it just shows. I remember seeing or reading somewhere that Jared Anderson said he wanted just 3 years in boxing and then he's done. is he done after Saturday night? You know, there could be an argument there, but it was a good fight, and me and you were watching it, Sam. Thankfully, the hotel managed to separate our beds. We didn't have to little spoon and big spoon. It was quite cold. We won't go into that. It's like the boat trip with Gavin and Stacey. But yeah, listen, Martin Bakole, he's cemented himself now in the heavyweight division, and you can't stop ignoring him. He was probably the most ignored heavyweight ever. And everyone was saying, oh, Jared Anderson could stop him. No, come on. If you know Martin Bakole, he went to France as an away fighter and he beat Tony Yoka. Tony Yoka now is fighting in leisure centres around South East London and all that. But yeah, Martin Bakole, I like that Zhang fight. I think that could be made. That Ajit Kayabel fight, if the rumours are true, Ajit Kayabel against Joseph Parker, Zhang versus Bakole, we could have a massive, massive fight come at the start of 2025, because I think, you know, the danger now could be, imagine this, that AJ beats Dubois or Dubois beats AJ. October 21st, we get Bakole against the winner of September 21st in December. That's just that. And you can make the argument that's more of a 50-50 than the rematch of Fury Usyk would be.
Yeah, it'd be a tough fight for whoever was put against Bakole, and you know, you'd never be 100% confident because of the power he's got in his hands. I'd love to talk about this card forever, and you know, we really could. Massive shout out to Andy Cruz, obviously made himself 4-0, still got that IBF International. Much more of a professional performance from Andy Cruz, I'd say, and I don't mean that in saying he's unprofessional, but he looks more like a pro than an amateur now. The way he's throwing his shots, the way he's looking to do more damage, and he's not quite so defensively orientated, and obviously there was, you know, so many great fights on that card. But like we said, the Canelo fight for Crawford, Turki Alalshikh said he was going to make that fight and offer it to Crawford, and he's since come back and said that that's not a fight he's interested in anymore, that they're going to be looking at other brilliant fights in the US and obviously over in Saudi Arabia for the UK fighters. Why do we think that is? Obviously, is Canelo too difficult to work with? Is it a fight that just didn't make sense? Ben, what do you think? Why do you think that fight didn't happen?
Yeah, well, if you look at the statement that Turki Alvarez made, it's clear that Canelo is probably difficult to work with. I think it's because he can price himself out of fights because of the amount of money he makes from them, and it allows him to be a bit more. He can pick and choose a bit more in terms of who he's going to fight, and like I suppose he doesn't want to take. He might look at it as he doesn't want to take a fight that's a big risk, even though I think after Saturday, I think we were looking at it with this fight, how we deal with the weight advantage. If Crawford was to go in against Canelo, you're looking at jumping up to 168, and then it's a whole stone difference then again from where he fought on Saturday. And I think as good as Crawford is, there's nothing against him. If he was to go and lose to Canelo, I think it's just the weight advantage would be too much. But yeah, there's still plenty of exciting fights to put on out there for Crawford and the other American fighters. One, if he was to stay at super welterweight, one that you could look at is one of the fighters that are fighting this weekend in Virgil Ortiz. Obviously, someone with 100% knockout ratio, and I think someone is more likely to get in there with Crawford and really stick it on him and try and knock him out, because that's all he tries to do when he's fighting. Compared to where Madrimov was a bit more of a chess match, I think that fight would really be. It could show the best of Crawford with his counter punching, but also it could be a big risk against someone that is guaranteed to go in there and just go for the knockout and not worry about trying to take it to the scorecards.
Promoter Ben at it again. That's a hell of a fight, that. But if Crawford was going to fight Canelo, and like I said yesterday, if he could beat Canelo, Crawford would be without doubt the pound for pound number one for generations to come. You know, but what I just love Turki Alalshikh. He comes out with statement after statement, and if you don't want to make great fights, you're not needed. Canelo Alvarez, go away. We'll still make great fights without you. If you want to price, you're out. If you want to charge $10 for a can of Coke, you get 8% of that. Fair enough. Okay, we'll work with other fighters. But yeah, listen, it's great, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what's next for Canelo Alvarez. If I'm being completely honest, for Canelo Alvarez, I don't care. But for Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez, my bum. God, he's in a fight that nobody wants. I think we're going to talk about it. I don't know if you boys saw that interview with Swayze. He said that he doesn't want the David Benavidez fight because sorry, my thought about going. He doesn't want the David Benavidez fight because he's too much of a risk. Hang on a minute. Terence Crawford's moving up. How many weight categories? 2 or something? That's a big risk. You were willing to fight him, but I priced yourself. But yeah, listen, it is what it is. It wasn't going to be a great fight. It was going to be one-sided. We would know what the result would be. Oh well. We can live with it, can't we?
I'm not too disappointed that we're going to miss out on that fight. It would be an interesting fight, and it would be cool that can Crawford do it at another weight class up and all these sorts of things. But like you say, I don't think as a fight in the ring necessarily, it's going to be all that interesting a fight. Yeah, it is what it is. We've got so many good fights coming up. We're going to see so many great fights. It's not going to be one that I'm going to regret that we never got. Now, what I've realised, I'm having a look at the time. We've spent a fair amount talking about that unbelievable card, and obviously we were up at the show in Barnsley, Harry. So I'm gonna put you to a test. We're gonna take a leaf out of Johnny Clark and Top Tier's book, and you're gonna have 45 seconds to tell us why that card was great. Not because we're running out of time, but because I think it will be an interesting thing to do. So when you're ready, when you start talking, I'll start your timer and I'll cut you off.
Well, what a night, what an atmosphere. There was, 7,500 people crammed into one stand. I went back to the hotel room and I had a headache. Joe Law, Stephen McKenna, go and watch it. It was a war. I don't even think there was a jab thrown. Joe Law's, what a warrior. I want to see him again. But Stephen McKenna showed his class. Caroline Dubois, talking about class, she's just on another level. Hopefully she gets another big fight. Callum Simpson, what a performance against Zach Chelli. The pressure, your homecoming. And he made it look easy, didn't he? But yeah, what a night in Barnsley. And I just, like I said, when I went back to the hotel and I put my head on that pillow, my ears were ringing, everything was ringing, and yeah, really great. I've got 5 seconds. Talking about the undercard, fighters to watch out for. Billy Denise. Look at that. I call myself the Welsh Eddie Hearn now. Have that done.
Fair enough. That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. The Welsh Johnny Clark is what you are, but that was good. That was not bad. Yeah, like you say, I mean, you said nothing that I couldn't say afterwards. Yeah, just all great fights. The setup they had in Barnsley, I hope we see it again. And if they do it again, anyone who's listening to this, if you're based up that way or just you're willing to travel to Barnsley, do it, because the atmosphere in that arena, in that stadium that they turned into a little arena, was just phenomenal. Unbelievable atmosphere. And yeah, they really got behind Callum Simpson. Now, someone who's also getting behind Callum Simpson and is a big fan of his and actually FaceTimed him while we were in the press conference afterwards, Ben Shalom, appeared on Pain Game, True Geordie's show where they talk about the boxing live in the stadium. Ben, I know you're a big fan of this. I watched the video this morning while I was getting ready for work, and it was great. I loved it. I thought Ben was, it was the best Ben Shalom we've ever seen. He was cracking jokes. He was making people laugh. He was being put, put to the test a little bit by those guys in the studio, and I thought he dealt with it pretty well. Talk about some interesting points. What do you make of the whole situation, the whole interview? Wanting to fight 5v5 with Eddie Hearn. What sort of things do you think of it, Ben?
Yeah, like you said, it was really interesting to give a chance to see a side of Ben Shalom that you probably don't usually see, and sometimes he gets a bit of criticism for that. He's probably, like you see, with the likes of Eddie Hearn, there's a bit more out there and a bit more of a character, but yeah, it was nice to see him be very confident, and they were sticking it on him with some of the questions, but he had an answer for everything, as they normally do. But yeah, he done well, and the interesting takeaway, like you said, was the fact that he said he'd like to do a 5v5 matchup with Matchroom, which would be amazing. I don't know whether, like they said on the show, whether they'd quite have the depth in their stable, but I'm sure if you looked at it for long enough, you could pick out some interesting fights, and even one that we talked about earlier with Martin Bakole is obviously under Ben Shalom with Boxer. he could be looking at the Anthony Joshua fight if he's to get a win in September. So that's one that you could look at, and that's a definite headliner, like a heavyweight showdown between them two out in Saudi Arabia if they were to do the 5v5 with Boxer. But one, I was having a little look at it, and one I thought would be interesting to chuck a Welsh fighter in there, even though Welsh fighters haven't had the best of records out in Saudi Arabia, as Rhys Edwards, though we've seen down in Cardiff, and Hobie Price, who is obviously signed with Matchroom. So I think they are ranked. They may both be ranked inside the top 10 or near enough the top 10 in the UK. So I think that a fight like that as well is another good one. So there's definitely potential there for 5v5 between the two, and yeah, it'd be fireworks again, a week of fireworks between Ben Shalom and Eddie Hearn, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was strange. We saw a different side of Ben Shalom, didn't we? And you know, he was drinking Coca-Cola. I hope there was nothing else in there. But yeah, it was strange. You know, I'd never seen a side of him where he's going for people. But like you say, he did call out Eddie Hearn. He did say a fight as well that's going to be next. Isaac Chamberlain, Vidal Riley. Whew, that's a cracking fight. And yeah, I think boxing need to start being respected a lot more, because they are one of the best promoters in Britain. You know, we saw the card on Saturday night. It was a great card, and you look at the entire year, what they've put on: Mikhail Meyer, Tasha Jonas, Wardley Clark, Willem Smith, Riakporhe, back-to-back stadiums then with Simpson and Chelli. It's been a great year for Boxer, and obviously then Martin Bakole winning on Saturday night just is the cherry on top. But yeah, it's a different side of him. I wasn't expecting him to be so, trying to think of the word, so forthcoming and so honest. But it's good to see sometimes as well that you build a rivalry now. Queensberry and Matchroom had that rivalry for so many years, and I think we're just at the start of a rivalry between Boxer and Matchroom. But yeah, 5v5 between them could be closer, more of a 50-50 than what Queensberry and Matchroom was back in June.
Yeah, I think what we've seen with boxing with Ben Shalom is, like you said multiple times in the interview, that Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren have been doing this for a long time, and they've had it their way for a long time. And I think if he just came in and started going, "Oh, you this, you that, this that, then they would quickly make it very, very difficult for him to do business. And I think they've made it quite hard for him to do business anyway. So I think he had to sort of play that role of, I'm just going to, I'm going to stay in my own lane. I'm going to do my own thing. And now he's getting to the point where they've got a stable, they've got a strong platform, and they've obviously got the deal with Sky. And so for as long as they've got that Sky Sports boxing deal, they're going to be in a really strong place. So I think now we're able to see a side to Ben that maybe we weren't able to before, which is only ever going to be good for boxing, and particularly British boxing as well. And if he can get himself involved more and more in the Saudi boxing scene, then it's more good fighters that we can see over there. Which is realistically, as much as I'm loving what boxers are doing in this country. If we want to continue to see the big fights in boxing, and if boxers fighters continue to grow at the way they are, they've already got a world champion in Lauren Price, and I'm sure they'll have a few more down the line that we're going to want to see boxer fighting and boxer fighters fighting Matchroom fighters and whatnot else. And when Turki Alalshikh gets his wallet out, then Eddie Hearn and Ben will have to shut up and get on with each other and do some business, because it just makes sense for both parties. So yeah, hopefully we see some good fights on that one, and an interesting interview. So shout out to True Geordie and the team for that one. Now, a controversial talking point, a talking point that I didn't realise was quite as big as it was until we went to Barnsley, and it was sort of the only real thing we were talking about in the press box, and everyone had differing opinions on it, is the situation with, apologies if my pronunciation is bad, Imane Khelif, the Algerian female fighter who's just made it to the Olympics final. What I thought we could do is I'll obviously ask you boys what your opinions on it is, but what I thought would be good to do first is just outline some of the facts around the situation, because there has been a lot of misinformation spread about it. So as far as I can tell, I've researched via the IBA's website, where they publish their meeting minutes when they obviously issued the ban and things like this, and also the various things that the Olympic Committee have released. And as far as I can tell, or as far as everything says, Imane Khelif is obviously not a transgender athlete, as was originally perceived. She was born and remains a woman. She has always been a woman throughout her life, whether that is, obviously some complications with genetics we don't know yet. She was banned in March in 2023 by the IBA following a win in their semi-finals, which included a win over an unbeaten Russian fighter. The IBA's president and is based in Russia. So obviously I'm not trying to say that there's any, malplay there, but I think it is important to understand that was the fight that triggered this reaction from the IBA. The Olympic Committee have doubted the IBA over their fairness and don't include them, trust them to put on their boxing and Olympic boxing anymore. They do it themselves. And they've called the ban sudden and said that the correct procedure wasn't taken in order to ban the athlete. And then the last thing is that the IBA, whilst they have banned her based off of both, it says on BoxRec, both blood tests and testosterone tests, they've come out and said that the blood tests are the reason they've banned her, but it's understood to be a chromosome test, though we don't know that for sure. They haven't come out and said exactly what it is, but they have said that there has been a test and the results are that she needs to be banned, which she first appealed, but then later withdrew the appeal, which is why it is sort of set in stone as far as the IBA are concerned that she is a banned athlete. So with all that being said, all that sort of information, as much as I could kind of procure that I had seen that was absolute fact and we could see, what do you make of it, Ben? Me and Harry have had a little bit of a chat on the way up. What's your thoughts on this whole situation, on whether she should have been fighting and the backlash that she's received and opponent pulling out and all these various things?
Yeah, I think looking at it, like you said, with all the information you've given there, shows the danger of social media sometimes and how quickly sort of misinformation can be spread, because I think I was sat there, I'm not sure when this started, was it maybe Friday or Saturday, but I was just scrolling through Twitter and you see all the commotion over it and everyone sort of kicking off saying that she shouldn't be involved and like calling out transgender athletes and things like this before anyone sort of really got to know any of the facts. And it is dangerous. It's like dangerous on her career, because it's obviously like for the remainder of her career now, she's probably going to have that on her back and always going to have that issue. And it's like, I think this just shows that people clearly need to be careful with the information they share before fully knowing all the facts. And I thought Boxing News done a very good piece on the whole story as well, obviously explaining the whole situation, that shared a lot of facts that you spoke about there. But yeah, it's a bit of a messy one, really, and it's not a great look for the sport, and definitely not a great look for the Olympics, and not something they're going to want to really promote.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you boys have said. It was a bit of a sticky, subject. We were talking in the car going up, and I think people, before they get on social media and start tweeting, they need to educate themselves on getting the facts right and making sure that what they're saying is true. And a lot of it wasn't true. And we need to remember there's a person behind this, and how much is that going to affect her? It hasn't affected her a lot because she's in a final boxing for a gold medal. But listen, this Olympics hasn't been great at all, has it, for publicity wise? And you ask yourself, is there, there's no surprise that it's not on the calendar yet for Los Angeles in 2028. The judges, the scoring, I'm sure we're going to talk about with Lewis Richardson last night. Potentially, you could say he got robbed. And we're saying this as Brits, and we're passionate for it, but you can talk about Delicious Ori as well. I thought he won that fight 3-0, but yeah, this year's Olympics has left a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth, because you enjoy watching it, but you look on social media and it's not in the best place it should be.
Yeah, I think, like you said, you boys have echoed all the sort of general thoughts on the situation. I think the one thing I would like to say, and I think it should go without saying, but it doesn't necessarily, is, as far as I can tell, the athlete has done absolutely nothing wrong and deserves none of the backlash she's got. She has been given a license by the Olympic Boxing Association or the Olympic Boxing Committee. They have said you are allowed to box in the Olympics. So what has she done? She's trained, she's turned up to the Olympics, and she's boxed. So as far as I'm aware, she's done absolutely nothing wrong. And I think the way the IBA have acted in terms of they've offered to pay, they are paying her last Italian opponent, whose name leaves me, but she was the one that pulled out after 45 seconds. The IBA have said we're going to pay you the winnings that you would have got if you got to the semi-final, which just helps absolutely nobody other than the IBA. I think being a little bit bitter about the fact that the Olympics no longer use them, and there being some politics between those two, those two parties, and what has that ended up in is not those two parties being harmed, but a woman, a fighter, a boxer that has been under immense scrutiny. I mean, you search up boxing on Google. This is what I said to you boys. You search up boxing on Google, and the first screen that comes up, that is the only thing that comes up. You have to scroll down before you get onto the Wikipedia page or anything about Crawford Madrimov. This is the size of this situation. So big respect to the girl for fighting through it. And obviously, I think in due time we'll see the eventual response and whether or not she should be fighting in the female division, or whether there's some genetic issues that mean that she shouldn't be. And you got to obviously protect fighters to the very end. This is a sport where people can get into the ring and unfortunately never leave it, so you have to be very, very careful. But until the facts are established and until everything is fully, like you boys said, stop. Just you don't have to tweet on Twitter. Not many people care about the exact little niche opinion you have on this situation. So maybe just wait a moment, have a look, have a think, take in the facts before you go. And that's the sort of deep, slightly more hard hitting stuff for this week. Sorry, you've put your finger. You got something to say there, Harry?
I was going to go off on another subject to actually look at the positives from this Olympics. We'll put the negatives aside, but I just want to give a massive shout out to Ireland's Kelly Harrington. She defeated China's Wenli Yang to go back-to-back Olympic champion. Fair play to her. There's a lot of bad news going around at the moment, but yeah, I just thought we'll just talk about that. Shout her out because she deserves to get shouted out. And like I said as well, Lewis Richardson, it wasn't looking like Great Britain was going to get a medal at this Olympics. And, the cycle hasn't been great because obviously the last Olympics was, 3 years ago. So, and we lost a lot of our good fighters as they've all turned pro. But yeah, it's good for Great Britain as well. And I don't know if you boys saw Lewis Richardson did an interview as well, and he said that he could be turning pro. And going back to this situation, just people need to do their research beforehand. You've got people like, I went out yesterday, there's people talking about it in a cafe, and you're listening to their conversation and you're like, you just not read the story, don't read the headline. You'd get in your head that there's a statement out there that tells you all of the stuff. Just read it. Don't just read transgender woman and a man, XY chromosome, blah, blah, blah. No, if she was born a woman, she's a woman. Let's just say that. She wasn't born a man and then changed. She was born a woman, she's a woman. And I think, what was it you were talking about in the press box on Saturday? A swimmer, Michael Phelps, was it, Sam?
Yeah, so Michael Phelps had a genetic disorder that meant he didn't produce lactic acid. And, that is in a similar vein. It's something that Michael Phelps never chose that decision, but he had it, and he ended up becoming the most decorated swimmer of all time. Any talented athlete has some genetic freak within them. It's just inevitable. And obviously, I think I don't want to speak too passionately because the Olympic committee might put a test together to see whether or not, and things might come out, and then we can comment on it then. But from what we've seen now, the backlash certainly is unnecessary. And it could well be that she's a perfectly eligible athlete that, let's not forget, has lost 9 times in the female division and has only got 5 knockouts, or 6 knockouts, I think now. She's not rewriting boxing history. She's not beating people by these huge margins. Sky Nicholson came out and said in defense of her and said, look, she's not that, she's not all that, basically. She's what she said in the most respectful way possible. She's good, but she's not great. She's not dangerous. So yeah, that's that. Back to the professional boxing. Virgil Ortiz Jr., like we said, Gabriela Fundora's fighting on the card. Cecilia Breckhouse. It's an really interesting card out in Las Vegas, in Nevada. We're going to be doing the predictions for this one on the Boxing News app. But before we jump into the predictions, Ben, obviously you mentioned Ortiz possibly fighting against Crawford. Any particular interest in that fight, or what have you got to say about that one?
No, I think it'll be a really good fight on the weekend. I think it's a fight that's going to go the distance with the two fighters that are in the ring. If you look at the record, I think one in Ortiz has got a 100% knockout record, and Alvarez's got 94%. So they're definitely going to be two fighters that are just going to be in there trying to take each other's heads off. But yeah, it should be a very good fight. That we're obviously going to get on to the predictions, but yeah, a good night of a good night of fights again on the card in America. There's a lot of talented fighters as always, but yeah, it could be, like I said earlier, a potential matchup for Crawford, whoever the winner is on Saturday night.
Yeah, this has got fight of the year written all over it with Virgil Ortiz. 46 fights between them, and there's 44 stoppages. Yeah, it's gonna be fireworks. But another fight as well on the other side of America in New York, at the theatre in MSG. Luis Alberto Lopez, the Road Warrior, they're calling him. Sam, you've got good memories of him coming over and beating one of your favourite boxers in Josh Warrington by majority decision. He's beaten the likes of Isaac Lowe. The guy, I'd say the chest. What were they all saying on Saturday night in the stadium?
Oh no, yeah. I'm so glad I kept it
What
quiet
happened?
until the press conference that I was a Leeds fan, because being in Barnsley, it wouldn't have been a great one to advertise.
Yeah, but it's a great night. It's a great weekend of boxing again. Obviously, not a lot happening in the UK, but over in the States, there always seems to be some good fights. And yeah, this main event, Golden Boy, what a fight! And Virgil Ortiz, Terence Crawford.
Right, well, get up your phones, boys. We got the important time of the week. Harry, you've come into this a little bit more now. You're enjoying this a bit more now. You're getting a few wins under your belt. I'll let you boys load up the app and get it sorted. The first fight on the card: Charles Conwell, Kiari Gray, super welterweight 10-rounder. It's a good fight. It's a good matchup for the two guys. For this one, I'm going to go for a Conwell knockout. I think is going to be the decision. What do you reckon, Ben?
I've gone for Charles Conwell decision. Not quite the knockout, but Charles Conwell, I think, is one of the fighters coming up with America. Definitely to keep an eye on. He's a very impressive fighter, but I think he picks up another win on the weekend and goes 20-0.
Yeah, I agree that he wins the fight, Charles Conwell, but 19 fights, 14 knockouts. I think he gets the stoppage.
Fair enough. And then Kenneth Sims Jr. versus Jair Valtierra, super lightweight 10-rounder. I'm gonna let you go first on this one, Harry. Actually, you won the last one. We'll not give you the luxury of just copying us. What do you think is going to be the decision on this one?
Of course, I'm copying you. Of course, I'm copying you. I'm going to go for a Sims Jr. points decision because let's be honest, who stops a Mexican?
Yeah, I think we've all got the same thought process here. That you never see a South American get stopped. So Sims Jr. decision.
Yeah, same for me. Cecilia Breckhouse versus Maricela Conejo, super welterweight 10-rounder. Now, when I was just having a look at this one, I was doing a bit of research. I know Breckhouse has been around for a long while as a fighter, but she held a world title for 11 years and defended it 25 times. That is an obscene level of defense from a title. I don't think anyone in the male division can say they've defended a title that many times. So fair play to her for that. Going into this one based off of that, I'm going to say she's going to win this one. I know she's getting a bit older these days, but I think she's going to win it points decision. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I've got the same. I've got her winning by points decision as well. We don't normally see a stoppage win in female boxing, but yeah, another points decision victory I've gone for there.
Yeah, completely agree with you there, boys. Yeah, 42 years old, mind. There's a 5-year age gap, but yeah, Celia Breakhouse, for quite an easy fight.
Fair enough. Gabriela Fundora, obviously sister of Sebastian Fundora, another world title holder. She's fighting for the IBF world flight. She's defending her IBF world flight against Daniela Asenjo, flyweight 10-rounder. I think of a Fundora points decision for this one. I think Fundora is a female fighter that is, gets more stoppages than most, but she's fighting a Chilean. We don't predict a South American to get stopped, and so as always, I'm going to go for the points decision. What about you, Harry?
Agree. Sweet Poison, I think the nickname is as well. So, yeah, stoppage points decision win.
I think we've all gone the same way. The Fundora family be keeping their world title belts and a decision victory for Fundora.
Fair enough. And then the big main event, Virgil Ortiz Jr. I suppose you say Serhii Bohachuk is the A side, I think, possibly. But either way, those two fighting super welterweight 12-rounder, going to be an unbelievable fight. Going to be a near guaranteed knockout. I think, between the two of them, they've got something like 43 knockouts or something. Virgil Ortiz Jr. is another one that never leaves the fourth round, I don't think, on average. On average, he fights 3.5 rounds a fight. So we're going to be an interesting fight. It's not one that we're going to have to spend too long catching up on. That being said, Harry, like I said, we're punishing you for winning last week. What's your prediction for that one?
Ortiz Jr. late stoppage. I think Bohachuk is going to be his toughest fight to date.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that this fight's not going to go the distance with two fighters that love a knockout. But I'm going for Ortiz Jr. by stoppage. I think it'll be within the first 6 rounds. Even the one fight that Bohachuk's lost was by a knockout as well against Brandon Adams. So, yeah, I think a stoppage win for Ortiz to make it, 22 stoppage wins, which is just crazy.
Yeah, I've gone for a stoppage as well. I reckon 4th round stoppage is what I'm going to go for. I reckon 4th round stoppage. So, yeah,
and
we'll
you want him to get on the mic. We want him to get on the mic afterwards and call out Terence Crawford and go, "You're next." Yeah. Stop ignoring me. Me and you. Maybe not October 12th, but December 21st. Me and you in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Let's do it. That's what you should be doing.
Sounds good. Well, that once again wraps up for another podcast episode. Plenty of stuff going on the channel at the moment. We've got an interview with Fran Hennessy that just went up on the weekend from the Boxer Show in Barnsley. We've obviously just released our first ever episode of Talk the Talk, the sort of gloves are off if you're a fan of the almost certainly copyrighted Sky Sports alternative. That kind of style interview which Ben took with the 2 first ever female Welsh title fighters, Victoria Perkins and Ashley Johnson. Did a cracking job. It's a good video if I say so myself, so check that one out. Other than that, all the usual stuff, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, all that good stuff. And we'll catch you next week for what should be another good episode of the Punch a Chance podcast.
Punch's Chance. Punch's Chance podcast.